الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الخلق وسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم إلى نور الفهم وأكرمنا بمعرفة العلم وزين أخلاقنا بالحلم يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم تقبل منا هذه الليلة من رمضان، ليلة السادس من رمضان. اللهم أعنا على القيام بحقها واكتبنا فيها من عبادك المقبولين. اللهم أعنا على إتمام عدة رمضان بإحسان واكتبنا في هذا الشهر من عتقائك من النار. اللهم اعتق رقابنا ورقاب آبائنا وأمهاتنا وإخواننا وأخواتنا وأزواجنا وذرياتنا من النار وادخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار. اللهم إنا نسألك فرجا عاجلا غير آجل لأمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم فك الكرب عن كل مكروب من أمة حبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، أنت به عليم. اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين. اللهم اشف مرضانا، اللهم اشف مرضانا وداوي جرحانا وتقبل شهداءنا. اللهم اختم لنا بخير أجمعين والحقنا بالصالحين واجعلنا من ورثة جناتك جنات النعيم يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين آمين. We were asked to make a dua for one of the sisters in the community who was a teacher in our Islamic schools for decades, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested her with illness, and she's actually the teacher of many of the leaders of our community like Shaykh Yasir, Ustad Zaid and others. Her name is Safinaz Matar, and she's known as Tant Safi. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant her patience with the trial that has befallen her, and to accept her and to elevate her status, to make her illness a means of cleansing and elevation for her. Allahumma ameen. اللهم ربنا إننا نسألك لها فرجا عاجلا يا رب العالمين، اشفها شفاء تاما لا يغادر سقما. اللهم عافها في بدنها وفي سمعها وفي بصرها. اللهم رد عنها الآلام والأوجاع. اللهم رد عنها الآلام والأوجاع وعافها في سمعها وفي بصرها. اللهم اشف أنت الشافي لا شفاء إلا شفاؤك، اشفها شفاء لا يغادر سقما. نسأل الله العظيم رب العرش العظيم أن يشفيها مما يؤذيها. نسأل الله العظيم رب العرش العظيم أن يشفيها مما يؤذيها. نسأل الله العظيم رب العرش العظيم أن يشفيها مما يؤذيها. اللهم داويها بدوائك واشفيها بشفائك وردها إلى كامل صحتها برحمتك أرحم الراحمين. اللهم نسألك في هذه الليلة المباركة من رمضان أن تفرج كربها وأن تتقبلها في عبادك الصالحين يا رب العالمين. اللهم جازها خير الجزاء على تعليمها الأولاد وعلى بذلها وعلى عطائها وخدمتها، وارض عنها يا رب العالمين واجعلها راضية مرضية. اللهم اجعلها راضية بقضائك واجعلها مرضية عندك يا رب العالمين. آمين آمين. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. We also make dua for one of the brothers who passed away in this past year. He used to attend with us the masjid here, and his family requested that we make dua for him. His name is Hajj Jamal Al-Khawatmi. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to have mercy on him and to illuminate his grave and to fill it with light and to make his children and his grandchildren the best predecessors for him and a continuation for his good deeds. Allahumma ameen. اللهم ارحمه رحمة واسعة. نسألك يا ربنا في هذه الليلة المباركة من رمضان أن ترحمه في قبره وأن تنير قبره بالعمل الصالح. آنس وحشته، اللهم آنس وحشته يا رب العالمين. وسر أمره، اللهم اجمعه بذويه وأحبابه في روضات الجنات يا رب العالمين. واغفر لنا إذا ما صرنا إلى ما صار إليه يا رب العالمين. اللهم ارحم موتانا وموتى المسلمين الذين شهدوا لك بالوحدانية ولنبيك بالرسالة وماتوا وهم على ذلك. اللهم آمين. The topic that I wanted to speak to you about for a few minutes until Salat al-Isha is a very important one. It's about our conversations. There are foundational things that can lead to a positive interaction with each other when we converse. And there are things that can lead to destructive results when it comes to conversations. Now, the conversations that we have reflect what's inside our hearts. And this is what we learn from our scholars. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, he says beautiful words. He says, وَإِذَا أَرَدْتَ أَن تَسْتَدِلَّ عَلَى مَا فِي الْقَلْبِ فَاسْتَدِلَّ عَلَيْهِ بِحَرَكَةِ اللِّسَانِ فَإِنَّهُ يُطْلِعُكَ عَلَى مَا فِي الْقَلْبِ شَاءَ صَاحِبُهُ أَمَبَى. If you want to know what's inside the heart of somebody, then look at what's on his tongue. Because the tongue's going to expose what's in the heart, whether that person likes it or not. And in that sense, the tongue is is like the spoon of the heart. There's actually another quote for one of our predecessors that says, "Al-qulub kal-qudur, taghli bima fiha, wa alsinatuha magharifuha." They liken the hearts of people to a pot that you put on the fire. And when the pot boils, whatever's inside it begins to simmer and gets exposed. And the tongue is like the spoon that brings out what's in the bottom of the pot. Now, if I want to have a healthy conversation, how does it start? Right? It starts with salam. Tahiyyatu ahli al-jannati salam. And in the tahiyya and salamu alaykum is a very important lesson in starting with positivity when we converse with each other. There's a certain barakah that's brought in the home when we start by saying assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullah. Certain barakah, and that's why we learn that it is matrada lish-shayateen. It turns away the devils from that home. Starting with positivity is an important and a remarkable thing that we learn from our deeds, from our deen. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jal describes this tahiyya as being a very blessed one in the Quran. فَإِذَا دَخَلْتُمْ بُيُوتًا فَسَلِّمُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ تَحِيَّةً مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ مُبَارَكَةً طَيِّبَةً. It's not just a casual Assalamu alaikum. No, it's a certain wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. It's a certain mindset and an attitude. Even I could be boiling with what's inside me. If the first thing that comes out of my mouth is something negative, guess what? The conversation's going to be negative. Out the window right there. The first thing, I'm boiling on the inside and I see someone and immediately I blurt out what angers me. It's not going to be a positive result. And if we watch ourselves, we're always going to see this the case. But if it starts off with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, I'm starting from a place of rahmah and tarahum, then there's a greater likelihood that the conversation is going to be successful. And it also teaches us the importance of saying pleasant things. The Quran says this, وَقُلْ لِعِبَادِي يَقُولُ الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَنْزَغُ بَيْنَهُم. Now, if I'm having difficulty with some of my interactions with those around me, I need to ask myself, well, how am I talking? If I'm talking with a way that is very destructive, very injurious, very hurtful, if I'm attacking people, if I'm very abrasive, and then I'm wondering, why am I always getting into conflicts? Why this and why that? Well, maybe I need to ask myself, how am I choosing to talk with people? How am I choosing to interact with people? So this is, an intro, but there's a lot more. If I'm going to have a healthy conversation, it's not just about how it starts. It's also about a few other factors. One of these critical factors is recognizing the status of the one I'm addressing. Who am I talking to? Am I talking to my little brother or my little sister? Or am I talking to my father or my mother? Is it the same all around? No, it's not the same. But here's the interesting thing. Does Islam teach us to dishonor anyone, whether they're small or big? No, it doesn't. That's why the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says, لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ لَمْ يوقر كبيرنا ويرحم صغيرنا وخلاص على كده ويعرف لعالمنا حقه. He's not from us. The one who doesn't recognize three things. The status of the elder, and this is something that's really, really lost in this day and age. It's very, very unfortunate. Too many problems happen because of this. Very often, son, daughter grow up a little bit. Mother, father, 50s, 60s. They don't understand anything, right? They just got to the age of 50 or 60 by being very ignorant about everything, right? But sometimes the children treat the parents like this. Like they're 50, 60 years old, and I'm going to talk to my father as though he's just starting off on his life journey. I'm going to explain to him how the world works. I'm a 15-year-old or 20-year-old punk, and I'm sorry for the word, but anjad, punk, right? 15, 20-year-old punk, and I'm going to talk to my father who's like 60 years old as though he was born yesterday, right? This is how a lot of conversations go south. And then sometimes there's a misconception. The son, daughter comes, no matter what I do, I can never please my mother or father. They're always angry at me. Before we blast your mother and father and say so many things about how they're incompetent and not good, maybe perhaps let's start with the way you're talking to them. Are you talking to them in an honorable way, in a loving way? in a way that the Quran teaches to talk to parents? وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Or am I talking to my father or my mother like they're my younger siblings? Right? This is something. So, لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ لَمْ يُوَقِّرْ كَبِيرَنَا. One who doesn't honor our elderly. And there's too much of this in society. Now, unfortunately, and I hope this is not happening right now in the masjid because that would be embarrassing. Now, sometimes what we have is someone in their 70s, 80s, someone disabled or someone physically challenged comes in masjid looking for a place to sit. And we see someone in their prime, healthy and able, 20 years old, decides to say sitting down, why do I get up for someone, you know, what do you mean get up for someone else? This is my chair, right? I'm not going to get up for someone else. Even if the person is like 70, 80 years old, selfish thinking. لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ لَمْ يُوَقِّرْ كَبِيرَنَا. And then, وَيَرْحَمْ صَغِيرَنَا. And the one who, you know, unfortunately this is the other side of the coin. Does Islam teach us to treat our children as though they're insignificant and unworthy? If I continue to treat my children like they're children, they will stay acting like children until they're in their 30s. But the Prophet ﷺ teaches us, no, raise your children as though they're men, right? Treat them with respect and dignity. So وَيَرْحَمْ صَغِيرًا, and then وَيَعْرِفْ لِعَالِمِنَا حَقَّهُ. So now, recognition of status. Look, this is a hadith of the Prophet, there's a hadith of the companions about what the Prophet ﷺ taught them. عن عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها أن رسول الله أنها قالت أمرنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن ننزل الناس منازلهم. So when I respect someone for their knowledge, it's not necessarily for their shakhs and for their that, but for the knowledge that they carry, the Quran that they carry, the status that Allah Azza wa Jal made them fill. So this is about recognition of status. And there's a lot to say about this from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So it starts with positivity, seconded by recognition of status, and then what's the third thing? Content of conversation. Well, what are you talking about? If the content of the conversation is nonsense, then guess what? Nonsense has a tendency to cause a lot of problems. That's why من نعيم أهل الجنة أنهم لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا كذابا. One of the forms of bliss in Jannah is that there is no nonsense in it. There's no لغو is needless talk, useless conversation. هذا من نعيم أهل الجنة. And the reason why it's a form of na'im is because if we look at our lives, we will see countless situations that could have been avoided if my conversations were more worthy. What am I talking about? Am I talking about something that's going to get me closer to Jannah? Or am I talking about قَالُ قُلْنَا, they said and we did and that and we heard uqil, whatever was said by the people. If it's nonsense, then guess what? It's going to lead to a whole lot of conflicts and disputes between each other. Now, what's the evidence from this, from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ? Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ tells us, مَا مِن قَوْمٍ يَقُومُونَ مِن مَجْلِسٍ لَا يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى فِيهِ إِلَّا قَامُوا عَنْ مِثْلِ جِيفَةِ حِمَارٍ وَكَانَ لَهُمْ حَسْرًا. If you go to a gathering, family gathering or whatnot, or just a outing with friends, that there is no dhikr, not an ounce of dhikr. All of it is akhbar ahl dunya, the conversations of the people of this world. Then guess what? That conversation, the Prophet ﷺ says, it's as though they're walking away from the carcass of a donkey. I don't even want to imagine that. How does that even look like? I don't want to imagine. It's disgusting. وَكَانَ لَهُمْ حَسْرًا. On the Day of Judgment, those majalis will be a source of hasarat. And that's why they say in the hikmah, مَنْ كَثُرَ كَلَامُهُ كَثُرَ سَقَطُهُ وَمَنْ كَثُرَ سَقَطُهُ كَثُرَ لَغَطُهُ وَمَنْ كَثُرَ لَغَطُهُ كَثُرَتْ خَطِيئَتُهُ وَمَنْ كَثُرَتْ خَطِيئَتُهُ فَالنَّارُ أَوْلَى بِهِ. These things start small. You talk a lot, guess what? You're going to fall a lot. And when you fall a lot, you're going to cross the boundaries a lot. And when you cross the boundaries a lot, you're going to fall into a lot of sin. And eventually, your tongue is going to lead you to the doorsteps of hellfire. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. So I mentioned a few things, and this is the last thing I'll conclude with. Last thing. So the first thing starts with positivity. It's seconded by recognition of status. Third thing, it is about content of conversation. And then the fourth and last thing I'm going to share with you is prohibition of exaggerations. The Prophet, we learn a lot from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ about not being someone who exaggerates their emotion. Even when it comes with laughter, for example. Laughing is a good thing, right? It makes you feel good on the inside. Well, not always. If it's excessive, it's not going to be good. إياك وكثرة الضحك فإنه يميت القلب ويذهب بنور الوجه. This is an authentic hadith reported in Musnad Imam Ahmad. The Prophet ﷺ said, be careful of excessive laughter, because excessive laughter causes the heart to die and does away with the nur that's in the face, the nur that's in the face. And when we talk about exaggerated emotions, we learn that the munafiqeen are very exaggerated in their emotions. يَحْسَبُونَ كُلَّ صَيْحَةٍ عَلَيْهِمْ. The munafiqeen are people who are very volatile and unstable. All sides of the spectrum. Thinking it's they're getting super angry. When they get angry, they cross all boundaries. Loving blindly when they love. And then also always expecting the worst when they're in trial, and so on. So very volatile bunch. The Prophet ﷺ prohibited exaggerated praise even. Even when you're saying something good about somebody. Is it okay to do it without boundaries? No. The Prophet ﷺ سمع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رجلا يثني على رجل ويطريه في المدحة فقال أهلكتم أو قطعتم ظهر الرجل. The Prophet ﷺ got very disappointed about someone who exaggerated praise beyond bounds. And he said, you're hurting this man. You're praising him, now you're hurting him. Don't do that. It's not good. And they say from the hikmah, and this is an important one, أحبب حبيبك هونا ما عسى أن يكون بغيضك يوما ما وأبغض بغيضك يوما ما هونا ما عسى أن يكون حبيبك هونا ما يوما ما. All right, so they say love with moderation, because you never know, the person you love might be your enemy one day. And also hate, quote unquote, with moderation, because you never know, this person that you hate, quote unquote, might be someone you're fond of one day. Calm down with your emotions. Now, again, I'll say them one more time. Start with positivity, recognize the status, look at the content of conversation, beware of prohibited expression of exaggerated expression of emotion, beware of exaggerated expression of emotion. And I went over the time, but I'll give you the fifth one and I'll stop with it. The art of listening. Learn how to listen. This is one of the most captivating things. The Prophet ﷺ, with all of his ilm and his hikmah and his maqam, was someone who wasn't always quick to talk. The Prophet ﷺ would see where the conversation would take him. The art of listening is a very, very important one. And I'll leave you with this statement. It's by Ibn al-Muqaffa'. He says, تعلم حسن الاستماع كما تتعلم حسن الكلام ومن حسن الاستماع إمهال المتكلم حتى ينقضي حديثه وقلة التلفت إلى الجواب والإقبال بالوجه والنظر إلى المتكلم والوعي لما يقول. The art of listening, there's books written about this. Right? He says in these beautiful words, learn how to listen like you learn how to talk. And it is of good listening to let the person finish what they're trying to say until the very end. Imagine how many conflicts that would do away with. Just this one. And not being so quick to jump on the response, and to actually focus with the person as they're talking. This is all min samim akhlaq al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us knowledge and understanding. Allahumma ameen. Inshallah, we're going to stand for our salah right now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.